Good morning, though it's almost noon, and I'm painfully aware that we are the last thing standing between you and lunch, but we do have an incredible group of panelists here today to talk about really the heart of the focus of today's conference, which is infrastructure, whether it's energy, water, transportation infrastructure. This is where we are going to get into the details. My name's Claire Coleman. I am the Connecticut Consumer Counsel. So what I do is advocate every day for customers of utilities. That's electric, water, gas, telecommunications. So really at the heart of the work that I do every day is ensuring that we're working towards a quality, resilient infrastructure that helps benefit Connecticut residents every day. So I couldn't be happier about being here today to moderate and facilitate this panel. And we know that infrastructure is really key to maintaining high quality of life. And just to prove that out and get everybody here, everybody's blood moving a little bit, I'm going to take a little informal poll. How many people here this morning when you woke up ran your water faucet to get some water, make some tea or coffee? Everybody. All right. How many of you took a train to get to Hartford this morning? All right. A few scattered here. How many used our roads, highways, bridges to drive their car here? Any electric vehicle owners that are using infrastructure here, charging? Awesome. And then how many of you who drove here relied on your GPS to get you here, relying on our internet system? So again, we're all every day relying on the infrastructure to get us these essential services, whether it's turning the lights on, accessing important information on our phones, using our computers from home, as we've heard about this more dynamic shift to teleworking. And the focus of our panel today, specifically on sustainable, resilient infrastructure, couldn't be more timely, right? How many Connecticut residents here lost power during Tropical Storm Isaias? I did. Well, we've all read the headlines and experienced a lot of the increased storms, flooding, and other dynamics that are caused by climate change. And our focus here is really ensuring that we're not just building infrastructure, but it's resilient infrastructure. And to the governor's point, what does resilient mean? I always think of it as sort of ensuring that we're able to withstand current risks, but also that we're looking into the future at what those risks are going to be and building infrastructure that's going to be able to sustain those risks. And that's what will benefit Connecticut residents the most. And of course, as we've heard, infrastructure that supports the decarbonization of our economy will also be critical to holding back those impacts of climate change on our infrastructure. And I can't walk away here today without talking as a consumer advocate who looks after bills about the fact that we all have to acknowledge all of these things obviously cost a lot of money. And that's where the Bipartisan Infrastructure Investment Act, or the bill law, is such a relief to me and customers of utility companies who often end up footing a lot of the bills for infrastructure. So for every dollar that this state is able to bring in from the federal government through the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, to me that's one dollar that we're potentially saving on utility bills. So it's a really important moment, and it was really great to hear all of the panelists and the commissioner and Commissioner Boughton and Governor Lamont talk about their vision for Connecticut and for the state in 2035. So why don't we dig into it with our panelists. There's so much to do to advance this vision, and I'm going to start off just by letting each of our panelists, we'll go right down the line, introduce themselves and talk about their organization, their mission, and how it supports the vision for modern infrastructure.
Good morning, and thank you so much, Claire. It is a true pleasure to be here this morning with my fellow distinguished panelists. My name is Emily Gallo, and I am Vice President and Director of Infrastructure and Mobility Equity at HNTB, an infrastructure solutions firm. And we are so proud to be your partners in planning, designing, and delivering some of the most transformational transportation projects in the state of Connecticut, like the Walk Bridge and the Mixmaster Interchange. I want to celebrate the leadership and vision of the leaders in the state for recognizing that infrastructure is important and powerful, not only because of what it is, but for what it does and what it can do for our communities. And that means inviting community members to have a voice in the transportation decisions that affect them. And it means going beyond considering how to mitigate impacts of those transportation projects to understanding their needs and looking at how we can bring benefits. And so we are committed to working with you to building and creating more inclusive infrastructure. A bit about me: I grew up in Guilford, Connecticut. Before joining HNTB, I worked for the City of New York, most recently as Chief of Staff at New York City DOT. I now hold a national role at our firm where I support agencies, policymakers, and our teams in considering equity throughout our projects. It's a pleasure to be here.
Good morning. My name is Hank Webster. I'm the Deputy Commissioner for the Energy Branch at the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. And I see, our role in looking towards 2035 and delivering on the vision that we've heard for Connecticut laid out here today, which is, I think, such a wonderful and beautiful and exciting vision. Our role in that is to make sure that we're enabling sustainable growth. Because we know that more people are going to want to come here due to the high quality of life and the capabilities to really be a part of the economy here, while maybe potentially working for a company that's somewhere else. We've heard that theme a lot today, and we want to make sure that as we're growing and as we're bringing new people in and as we're building up all of this infrastructure, that we're doing so in a sustainable way, so that we're not repeating some of the trends of the past where we're adding to pollution, from fossil fuel usage and the like. And so when I think of 2035, I see a vision of, cleaner air, of safer, healthier buildings, of enhanced connectivity for people, of cleaner transportation choices, whether that is still a personal vehicle that is now running on electricity rather than fossil fuels, or, as I'm sure we'll hear from my colleague here from DOT, about optional our opportunities to use mass transit in a more efficient way and to have greater access to those stations. And so we're constantly looking at all of these opportunities to make sure that we're proceeding in the right way. And I think that, broadly speaking, for the economy, it's all representing this positive shift away from our over-reliance on fossil fuels, which we don't produce in this region. So every drop or every molecule that we have to utilize for those resources, we need to bring in from somewhere else. And we're going to transition to a system that is more independent, more reliable, more resilient, especially as we know that there will be some impacts from climate change coming to our state, whether that's flooding or higher winds. And so really designing a system and being thoughtful about the things that we need to do in the long term is also going to make us stronger, make us more resilient, more vibrant. It's going to lead to a lot of jobs. It's going to lead to need workforce development because all of this transition, all of this growth is going to require people doing the work. And I think that's a really exciting opportunity to not only develop our own internal workforce here, but also to attract that workforce from other states to come and move here and make Connecticut their home. So that's I think our vision. It's really exciting to be here and excited to participate on this panel. Thank you.
Hi. Good morning. Can y'all hear me? Okay. Okay. All right, is that better? Thank you. It's always important when you're talking that you be heard. My name is Karen Kitsis. I'm Deputy Commissioner at Connecticut DOT, where I have been working since June. Prior to that, I held a position in capital project development for Sound Transit, a major transit authority in the Pacific Northwest. I also have work experience in California, Virginia, where I'm from, North Carolina, and Florida. I relish the opportunity to move to Connecticut, in part to get to work with and for Commissioner Gallo and in the governor's administration, and also the thought was to live between New York and Boston. How exciting. But what I have learned since being here is that Connecticut is where the quality of life lies between those places. And the opportunity to work for the Connecticut DOT to help folks move better and more effectively with the trips they need to make as part of their daily life is what energizes me with coming to work. Right now we are at a kind of an amazing point in the history of infrastructure, both in Connecticut and the United States. There's kind of two parts to 2035. There's the vision, which I'll talk a little bit more about, and the second part is what can we implement. And there will be further questions about what the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act brings. But the pivotal moment we're at enables both a vision and then one that we can look to achieve because of the funding. At Connecticut DOT, we are focusing on safety, accessibility, and sustainability in the projects that we'll be bringing forward. Equity is at the heart of our mission, looking to overcome historic wrongs that, if you think about the interstate system in the mid-20th century, that very negatively impacted black and brown communities by creating division. We're looking to overcome those as much as possible. I can quote statistics about how investment in transit, for every dollar you get a return of $5. If you couple that with housing, investment in infrastructure is essential. Housing and transportation are the two largest components of what make up people's budget. So if we can provide housing closer to transit, and if we can provide more effective transportation systems, that enables and frees up people's budgets to spend on other things, the quality of life aspects that we heard about. In the future, we envision a transportation system that creates options for everyone. Faster trips into New York, in between New Haven and New York, which we heard about, improved roadways with safer and more accessible areas. This starts with a policy, a directive that was recently issued within our own department to look at complete streets. This means that every user of roadways will be thought of when new streets are put in or greatly improved, not just the roadway user, which we hope and expect in 2035 to be predominantly electric vehicles, but also for pedestrians, cyclists, and other folks that are using the transit infrastructure that will be making up those roadways. It's our vision, and we'll talk more about the specific projects that will make this a reality, but we want 2035 to be more accessible, safer, and sustainable for all Connecticut residents. Thank you very much.
Good morning. My name's Craig Patla. I'm president of Connecticut Water Company. And boy, you can't sit in this room and not be excited about the future of the state of Connecticut and where it's headed. I've been with our company now for almost 34 years, and there's never been an excitement around the infrastructure possibilities in the state as there is right now, and especially on the heels of the infrastructure bipartisan bill, which is just celebrating its 2-year anniversary. We're at a threshold moment. There's just no doubt. It's an awesome possibility for the state of Connecticut, and with that comes awesome responsibility for all of us involved in that economic possibility. You think about the moments in our history, maybe post-Civil War, the New Deal, the interstate highway system, roads, building. In my business, Safe Drinking Water Act or Surface Water Treatment Rule, those were all threshold moments that set the stage for the next 50 years and beyond for our state and the infrastructure involved. And here we sit at another one of those moments where it's upon us to take that responsibility and really drive that forward responsibly. You know, it's exciting to hear about roads and the expansion of roads. Well, my business, roads not only includes the traffic, the pedestrians and all, but it also includes all the utilities underground. Now, I'm very aware that the utility business that I'm involved with is not sexy, but it is necessary to really enable all else that we've talked about all morning. It is elemental to our ability to grow. It is structurally is a structural necessity to allow for that economic development that each community chooses to have, and the state wants to drive towards as well. How we do that, and I appreciated the comments from the representative earlier and Mayor Loretti there about the town of Shelton and the struggles they've had with the well, not the struggles, but the advantages they've taken through the Clean Water Act and other towns' inability to really grow because of lack of sewerage. Well, water's the same thing, and it's really it's the backbone that allows all else. So thinking about how we take that on responsibly and partnering with our communities and our state to make sure that we're considering the growth potential of the state and our role in that as these very exciting projects get off the ground and start moving forward. Well, that's us, and we just really look forward to being part of that equation and those conversations as they do lift off. We work very closely with all of the state agencies, primarily with DOT, but also with DEEP and Department of Health, as we look to meet our mission of providing not just public health and safety, but also an ability to develop economically.
Great, thank you all. So given we are here to celebrate in part the 2-year anniversary of the Bipartisan Infrastructure and Investment Act, I'm hoping particularly our state agencies can talk about what specific opportunities having the infrastructure law funding and grant program opportunities has brought to our state.
Would you like to go first?
Okay. We're being very polite up here. I'm an urban planner by training, and I have worked on a lot of plans, both on the public side and the private side. Some plans have resulted in action. Others have sat on a shelf for a long time and not resulted in anything, either due to lack of funding or lack of political will. Under Governor Lamont, we have the political will to drive forward infrastructure, and with the bipartisan infrastructure law, we actually have the funds to have those plans become reality. And I would agree with everything that you mentioned in regards to what a unique moment in time this is. One of the major elements that's important to the governor, and therefore to Governor Euclid and myself, is reducing travel time between New Haven and New York. The infrastructure law has enabled us, and some other discretionary grants that we've been successful in receiving, are going to make those infrastructure that we need to make that travel time savings possible. That includes the walk bridge, which I'll talk a little bit more about later. We are also looking at projects that will, combined with state bond funding as a match, will enable us to begin work on the new Mixed Master in Waterbury, on projects like Interstate 691, 15, and 91 in Meriden. In addition to rail projects across the state, new stations, improved travel time, we are also looking at infrastructure for the future. Through the Infrastructure Act, there's also a program for establishing electric chargers on the major interstates in the state. It's a drop in the bucket. It's 15, up to 15 that we're currently looking to the private sector to partner with us to do. But because the Infrastructure Act, and we've heard this in the different sectors, has so many different places where it's advancing infrastructure investment and how we move, the opportunity for us as the state DOT and the holder of those federal funds, working partnership with different federal agencies, every element of transportation will be improved. And it's incumbent on us to make use of this opportunity and advance those projects as quickly and as effectively as we can.
And I think one of the things that DEEP focuses on every year, because we put out an annual inventory on it, is our greenhouse gas emissions inventory. And so we're tracking which sectors of our economy are contributing the most, not only carbon pollution, but also, if you think more locally, about the air pollution in our cities and in our towns. So we look at that and we see, I'll zoom out, not only the bipartisan infrastructure law, but also the Inflation Reduction Act and ARPA before that. There's this suite of investments and opportunities, not only for guiding, large projects that are procured through state processes, but also for consumers. There's tons of tax rebates out there that are going to help consumers make this transition and do the types of things either for their transportation or in their buildings that are going to help reduce our emissions on all of those fronts, and also reduce the local air pollution, and not only outdoor local air pollution, but indoor air pollution. We don't talk enough about that, but a lot of this transition is also going to yield a lot of benefits on cleaning up our indoor air as we move to things like induction stoves or all-electric HVAC equipment instead of fossil-burning equipment in buildings. That's all going to yield enormous health benefits for the people that live in those buildings. When I think about the broadband connectivity, and some of you might be wondering, what is DEEP doing talking about broadband? Well, we have an office that works on telecom and broadband, and Kevin Sastrich is our office director, and he's here. So if you have any questions about our broadband programs, you can feel free to tag him after or during lunch. But we look at that as another way to make sure that we're serving the entire state. So the governor correctly noted that we're very far along on that road, but there's investments from the federal government that the state will be implementing that will complete the access to the true high-speed internet. So 1 gig download and 100 megabyte upload. And so that's going to really help people continue to connect with the economy. Obviously, we learned a lot during the pandemic about how valuable that infrastructure is and how it can be utilized. This is an investment that's going to complete the job, finish the job, and is also going to upgrade service along the way. So some people might have access to what is being considered high speed right now, but either those speeds might not be actually realized or they need upgrades. This is also going to help with that. And so we're going to have a completely connected economy. We're going to be able to attract a lot of people here for the quality of life in Connecticut, but also be able to access that broader economy. And so that's a really exciting opportunity that we have. And I'll also note that, going back to the greenhouse gas inventory, when we look at transportation, which is our largest emitting sector, if you're stuck in traffic, look at the tailpipe in front of you. That is part of it. But as we give people more of an opportunity and to be able to do teleworking, we did see that during the pandemic as being the largest driver of our emissions reduction during that time period. And so there are opportunities there to make sure that we're improving the climate, improving our local environment, also improving the daily lives, kids studying around the table and being able to work on their homework a little bit more efficiently. These are all really great benefits that we can all expect to see by 2035. So it's very exciting.
Great, thank you both. And just to follow up on that, Craig, I know that the IIJA we've been talking about has a lot of focus on safe drinking water, and I'm just wondering if you'd like to add anything about the opportunities for private companies as well that come from the IIJA to help support infrastructure needs.
Yeah, sure thing. That largely comes through the collaboration with the towns with which we serve. Towns express that need. We work with those towns to apply for the necessary funds to meet their needs where they see fit. And it's all about, and typically about their correcting an issue or providing for economic development. In the water industry itself, a lot of our underground infrastructure, I mentioned the Civil War earlier, a lot of it is still circa that area. So we need to absolutely go at that infrastructure issue. We have at Connecticut Water, where we've committed to replacing 1% of our pipeline every year at significant investment. But working with those towns to target the replacements specifically where they want them and where it's needed, absolutely critical, and then partnering with them on funding opportunities as well through the infrastructure bill. That's a win. That's a win every time for us.
Great. And while we're talking about leadership from the federal government, one of the related initiatives has been the Justice 40 initiative, which is the first time the federal government has set a goal of targeting at least 40% of investments to underserved, overburdened communities that have been impacted by pollution and climate change impacts. So Emily, I'd like to turn to you first to talk about how that is impacting the work that you do and what community engagement strategies that you're able to deploy to ensure we're effectively representing those communities.
Thank you so much for that question. I have a couple of thoughts to share on this area. First is that we are seeing a broadening of the definition of underserved communities. Traditionally, environmental justice has focused on low-income and minority populations. And as Claire mentioned, the Biden administration has issued a number of executive orders that have really expanded the definition of who is included in our understanding of underserved communities. So now that meaning includes populations like people who live in rural communities, people with disabilities, women and girls, members of religious minorities, populations who are suffering persistent poverty, and the list goes on. And so there are a number of tools and ways to identify these populations. And you need to think about using both statistics and stories. And what I mean by that is that you need to look at demographics so that you can understand the different kinds of populations that are living in the community, but then stories by engaging with community leaders and community-based organizations. So that's the first point. The second point, how do you engage with members of underserved communities, and what are the best ways to engage with them? Well, the best way is to ask them how they want to be engaged. So consider approaching leaders of organizations and elected officials and community leaders and asking them, how do they want to be engaged? How often do you want to be engaged? What are your expectations for the engagement? Many of these projects take a very long time, and establishing trust is important to the success of any project. The third point I want to make about this is that engagement with underserved communities, it's not just a planning activity, right? Sometimes we think we do a lot of it in the planning phase, and then it gets handed off to the designers and the constructors, and it's done. But engagement is something that should be continuous and happening throughout the entire project life cycle. And so when you center communities in the middle of the project, you can establish trust and get continuous feedback and ideas to create a more successful solutions that really meet community needs throughout the entire project.
That's really helpful, thank you. And Hank and Karen, I know that DEEP and DOT have done a lot recently to increase community engagement. Any insights you'd like to share from your experiences to add to that?
Yeah, sure. So as part of our efforts with the CJAC, the Connecticut Equity and Environmental Justice Advisory Committee, we are taking a special focus on trying to understand what are the needs of the community, what are the, a lot of what you said about how do they want to be engaged. I do a lot of thinking about meeting people where they are so that we're not establishing this separate process of, okay, well, we want to talk about this, so we're going to establish this whole separate meeting and you know, require you to come for that and all that. I mean, that is part of it, but a lot of it is also taking the opportunity to meet them where they're at, right? I often joke with our team, we should be at the opening of an envelope if we get an invite to do that. You know, we should be able to go out and talk to people anytime, anywhere, because there's a real thirst for the knowledge. And we all, I'll say for deep, but I think a lot of people, this resonates with a lot of people, we need to do a lot better job of just continually getting people the information, especially with these federal investments. I mean, you're hearing about it on the news, you're seeing the press events, right? And there's a lot going on, but people are struggling to understand how to access that. And a lot of that money isn't even flowing yet from some things because there's program guidance that needs to be developed, and in some cases we need to apply for it, or we need to build a program that complies with the federal requirements. And so there's a timeliness to this as well. And then the third challenge of that I think people are facing, and also we're trying to also grapple with and help communicate, is how do these federal opportunities intersect with existing state or federal resources? You know, some of this stuff is not all brand new, and some of it is going to integrate really well with things like our energy efficiency plan or our conservation and load management plan. That is a huge program every year. It is wildly popular. It's been oversubscribed for the last few years. The demand is outpacing the resources, and some of the federal investments are going to help to meet some of that increased demand. But we need to think about how we braid those, how we stack them, and also how we make sure that as we're building up the workforce, which also is another part of this just transition, is making sure that the benefits and the jobs also flow to people in Justice 40 communities. How do we make sure that that's not going to just rise and rise and rise and then hit a cliff? We need to make sure that that is all sustainable and that we're you know, following through, not only through 2035, but for the long term, because there is so much work that we can do to make this you know, economy, the environment, all of our energy systems, our transportation systems, exactly what we want. And we need to have not only, you know, the plan for the next 12 years, but beyond. And I think that's really important to engage the community and to make sure that we're getting their input really early on and sustain through that and to meet them where they are.
At DOT, we are being intentional in this area, and in two ways that I'll mention. One is directly related to what Emily just shared. We recently released the Greater Hartford Mobility Study, which is a study that's looking at overcoming some of those historic wrongs I mentioned, as well as improving mobility for folks in the Hartford area with a series of projects that have a short, medium, and long-term focus. A couple of things that we did there. One, we consulted with the voices of women of color, with outreach and engagement. So going into a community and working with a organization that knows the community, because it is part of the community. We also held, in addition to the standard public meetings, house meetings, where we went where folks were and enabled them to ask us questions, and created a dialogue that we intend to have go beyond just the planning phase. The other thing that we're doing is harnessing this energy and establishing a new public involvement unit headed by Shannon Burnham, who's here in the audience, that will not just be set up for one project and then another, but will look to bring outreach and involvement expertise to all of the efforts that we undertake.
Great, thanks very much. Craig, I'm going to turn to you again. You talked a little bit about water infrastructure and how critical it is to health and safety and well-being. And just to get into the practicalities a bit for the audience, what are some of the considerations when you're considering an infrastructure project? What are the things that you think about to ensure sustainability, resiliency, and that it will benefit those you're serving?
You know, so right now, I mentioned earlier the surface water treatment rule. That was promulgated in 1980. That was really the last major rule that affected the water industry. And here we are today in 2023 on the cusp of a revised lead and copper rule. Thank you, Flint, Michigan. And emerging contaminant rule regarding PFAS, right? So we've got challenges right there with new regulation. We've got aging infrastructure. I talked about the network of mains that we have in there that we've been historically lax on, but recently attentive to. Okay, we've got climate change that is revealing itself more and more every year, and of course we're all aware of the hurricanes and those storms that roll up the coast. And you asked the question, raise the hands, who lost power? I think there were more out there that actually did. But it's also, we're seeing more droughts, and that's affecting water supply. We're seeing some of our wells along the coastline going brackish, which is an indication of sea level rise. Aging workforce. You know, Claire, these are all the things that keep me up at night, but they do as well help to inform where our capital investment needs to be to support the communities. Because the communities, by virtue of the fact that the water industry is facing these challenges, well, then so are the communities. You know, because we are so woven into the fabric of those communities that it's absolutely important for those communities to sit up, take notice of what's happening in the at times very invisible water world, but also very critical to the vibrance of those communities. So as we prioritize projects, it takes all of those things into consideration, does a risk evaluation around each of those, where it's become very concerning to me is that risk equation number keeps going up and up and up every year. So it's just a call to action for us. As not just and it's I keep referring to water, but it's not just water; it's all utilities to do what's necessary to serve the customers, the citizens of Connecticut, but as well to meet the state where it wants to go, as exemplified by this conference right here, and meet the needs of the future of Connecticut, that 2035 vision and beyond, because you know it's really upon us. I said before, we're not sexy. I know that I drill that, you know, but we need to do today what's going to serve the communities for the next 100 years, you know, and that's something that's within our scope and within what we think about as we look to meet the challenges of today and tomorrow.
Great, thank you. And you are certainly not alone in being kept up late at night and in the middle of the night pondering how we solve all these problems. So one of the comments you made is relevant to workforce development, and we've heard some comments throughout the panels today about the concern about the needs of a growing workforce. I know with my own agency, we are often challenged to find technical expertise, engineering expertise to help evaluate utility plans. And I know, you know, in both energy and transportation and water, there are a lot of skills that we need to develop. And Karen, I'll start with you in terms of DOT's experience with workforce development and what DOT is doing to help ensure we have those skills at the ready.
Yes, it's a tough question. I think as we heard from the last panel, worker shortages are happening at all levels, professional. For us, it's also folks that are out in our garages, the folks that maintain our roads, will be running the snow plows that are very important here. Although I'm hoping this isn't the year that all the snow returns. I'm hoping to kind of ease into it a little bit with my experience here. We'll see. So it's one of those things we also have to be intentional about. We are one of our major shortcomings, and it's across the industry, not just for us at DOT, is engineers. We are a couple hundred short at this point, so we're having to be creative in how we do work. The influx of money that has come in is fantastic, but it's also hitting us at a point when the workforce we have isn't sufficient to meet the work that we had before we got all the new money. So recognizing that conundrum, we're being creative, we're utilizing consultant support where we can, but we're also trying to help support the pipeline. Working, we have active meetings with folks like UConn and the engineering departments across the state, some that might look, hopefully if we can continue to to work with them, and the administration is supportive as well, perhaps increase the size of that. But it won't get fixed overnight. And we have to think about the selling points, in our case, working for the state, the benefits and the consistency of job. We also have to think about tapping in early. One of the programs that has been successful for us is our summer intern program that has been run with Counsel, which is an organization that looks at minorities within the transportation sector and improving opportunities for them. And we have folks that are returning year on year. We also are going into schools and high schools even and looking to find kids whose path may or may not include college and talk about the opportunities that exist within our maintenance area, electricians, mechanics, and get them in early. I was at one garage and there was a story of a 16-year-old girl from a high school that was in there and getting her hands dirty and loving the work. So we have to, again, I think this has been stated before, but get creative in both the opportunities and the benefits that exist within working for the state and working within transportation. But again, it is not going to be something that is sold overnight. So it's a multi-pronged approach that we are looking at, both from the educators and those that perhaps will be in those seats in the future.
I'll say that, with so much of this transition underway, we are seeing that there is need. I mean, there are need for electricians, power engineers, the whole up and down, people doing weatherization of buildings. So there's a huge opportunity, and I want to acknowledge our partners in labor, in how they are structured, how they are structured, and thinking about the long term, right, through the apprenticeship programs that. There is money put into the system to continue that work for through the lean times as well, and make sure that they are training the next generation of the workforce, and that it's all getting brought in to deliver on these projects. As much automation as there is out there, and as much of this technology is going to really unlock a lot of efficiencies, it starts with people with boots on the ground, with people's hands on things actually building. And so we really need to make sure that we are thinking about the workforce, thinking about making sure the benefits of the workforce development are also reaching communities that have not traditionally benefited from the clean energy transition. And again, there's a huge opportunity to not only help people that are currently in Connecticut, but think about the next generations that will want to move here because of a strong economy.
Great.
Claire, if I can just comment quickly.
Absolutely.
When I first started, if you had a pipe wrench in a pickup truck, you could be considered a waterman, But the way that the technology has advanced around what some people think is the very simple water showing up at your tap in the morning to brush your teeth is so much more technical now. I think that an untapped resource in the state of Connecticut are our community colleges, and really engaging with them to develop the workforces that are going to be a necessity for us to meet the challenges of 2035 and beyond.
Absolutely. Emily, would you like to say something?
Yes, thanks. I also just want to add a piece of this, too, is considering our historically underutilized business partners and working together to provide meaningful work, meaningful opportunities on the big projects that are coming out of these agencies, and partnering together to help them grow their businesses and really build generational wealth for their communities.
Great. Thank you all. So I think we're going to transition to some Q&A, but while we're doing that, put up some DOT renderings. And actually, Karen, do you just want to quickly run through these examples of new DOT infrastructure?
Sure. This is the Naugatuck train station, what it will look like in 2035. Commissioner Euclid is from that valley and wanted to make sure we showed a picture from there. But this is on the Waterbury line where ridership has gone up over 40%. So one thing I can tell you, having worked in transit across the country, that our stations and facilities, bus and rail, are clean here. They are inviting. And this will be another of those stations that will serve our community. There might be another picture of that. Okay, this is Walk Bridge under construction. This is a mega project, and for those that may not be presidential historians, Walk Bridge was originally constructed under President Grover Cleveland, which was 127 years ago. So it has earned the right to be replaced, and our engineers have worked with probably most of the industry to try to get this ready to be designed and constructed. This project represents others that we will be engaging on over the next 5 to 15 years that will replace infrastructure that has outlived its useful life, but also will come with other improvements and efficiencies that will reduce that travel time between New York and New Haven. And also create green space too around it. So those are some images into the future.
Exciting. I think we have time for 1 or 2 questions, if you're not too hungry. Absolutely.
Sure, I have a question. As many know, highways have gone through cities, and we don't have a clean history of what they've done to the cities. But the smaller cities that see neighborhoods being cut off are looking at how can DOT kind of open up their appetite to kind of reimagining what those structures can look like in regards to arts and cultures and murals and art. So I'm curious to know if the future looks brighter with arts and culture more involved in the design of these larger structures and roadways in our cities.
Yes, absolutely. I think as we're talking about, one of the themes that I've appreciated hearing through all the presentations is looking at quality of life and placemaking. I don't know if that term's been used specifically, but when we're going in and looking at infrastructure development, it can't be just a singular focus. We've got to have conduit for the utilities that need to come in, future-proofing how much space you may need for conduit you don't even know is going to have to be there in the future. And I think looking at art also as an opportunity to create spaces that can be enjoyed by communities is absolutely a part of the conversation that we'll be having and thinking about as we come in. I mean, the transportation needs to run efficiently, don't get me wrong. Cars and vehicles need to be able to get through. But one of the things that, especially in a downtown center, is slowing the traffic down to create opportunity for people to safely look around and see what's happening and maybe stop and look at the art or shop at a store. And that complete streets idea can spur on, I guess is a better way to put it, those conversations that you're having about looking at the culture within the communities that you're traveling to and through.
I saw a hand in the back. Sure.
Thank you. Thank you for all of this wealth of information today. A couple of things that just came to mind while I was listening are the school buses. Is that part of a project, or what does that look like in 2035? I recently got stuck behind a school bus at a light, and I didn't know if I was going to make it after that because of all the exhaust. Is that a project or something? I can't see how that could be a healthy situation for our children being transported to and from school. And then my next comment is about the workforce. When I was 17 years old, I was hired by Aetna Life and Casualty because of some skill sets I got in high school. I was there 10 years, and during that time, I was raised to be a really great businesswoman, and it paid for my education during that time. So is that something that would be a consideration for kids out of high school?
I'll start talking a little bit about school buses, and I'm really glad that you raised it because that is such a great opportunity, and it's already rolling out. But school buses, as you noted, they typically run on diesel, and there is particulate matter that comes along with that, and fossil fuels have served us. They've helped us move, they've helped us build the economy, but we now have technologies that can do it more cleanly. And so there are electric school buses. You have a pretty known route, so you can adjust the bus purchase to whatever range you need throughout the year. And then what do school buses do in the summer? Most of the time, nothing, right? Like, I mean, maybe they get rented out for different things and field trips, or they get utilized. But a lot of the time, they're sitting around. And so that battery that's on the bus now becomes a resource for the grid. And so you are actually able to tap into the energy that's on that battery on the school bus, and the school district or whoever owns it can get a financial benefit for sending that energy back into the grid at the times when we need it the most, during the summer, during peak demand events when everybody's turning on their air conditioning when it's really hot. And so that is a huge economic opportunity. It's a huge opportunity to improve the grid resiliency without having to build out, the same sort of scale of resources that you normally would. And it also provides another financial opportunity for whoever is the owner of that bus to participate. And you can then scale that up and think about, okay, well, you've got the chargers at the school or whatever bus depot. Maybe there's a canopy with solar on top. Maybe that canopy also during the winter helps clear the buses off or keep the snow off of them. I know you don't want the snow to come, but it probably will still come for a little bit.
Just not a lot.
But there's all these different elements of the value stack that you can start to see. And so, I'm really excited you brought up school buses. It's a huge opportunity.
Claire, we had
Great.
one question all the way in the back.
Yes.
Somebody had their hand up forever. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Just wanted to make a point. Everyone's speaking about workforce development, and one of the best ways to utilize workforce development is a project labor agreement, which uses a bona fide apprenticeship program, taps into the high schools, grows people from diverse backgrounds, women, minority, veterans. All of those things are utilized under a project labor agreement. When we tackle large projects, use of those agreements bring people into the workforce, get them trained, and move them on. As we're looking at projects moving forward, you all have the opportunity, all the people in here with towns, we can do that with high schools, with public buildings, with large infrastructure. So please consider them when they come forward. If you're concerned about workforce development, that's your opportunity to get people into the trades so we can continue building buildings. Thank you.
And I do want to thank our panelists for all the valuable insights today. Thank you.